The towering glass conference room of the Grand Palmer Hotel buzzed with panic. Michael Donovan, CEO of Apex Ventures, paced frantically, his designer suit wrinkled from stress. "Where is she? The delegation arrives in 2 hours." Michael slammed his fist on the mahogany table. 2 years of work, $500 million, and our translator chooses today to have appendicitis? His executive team sat frozen, eyes glued to laptops and phones, desperately searching for solutions. "Sir," his VP whispered, "every agency in Chicago is booked. It's the International Trade Conference week." Michael ran trembling fingers through his silver hair. "So we're just supposed to smile and nod at the third largest manufacturing conglomerate in China? We're finished." Behind them, Alicia quietly pushed her cleaning cart, invisible as always. She paused, cloth in hand, listening. Michael's voice cracked with defeat. "Unless someone in this room magically speaks fluent Mandarin." "Wo hui shuo," came a soft voice from behind. "I speak it." The Grand Palmer Hotel stood as Chicago's crown jewel of luxury hospitality. Crystal chandeliers hung from 30-foot ceilings in the lobby, where staff in crisp uniforms glided across marble floors. Outside, limousines lined the circular drive as bellhops whisked away designer luggage. Today's energy was different, more electric, more urgent. Black-suited security personnel whispered into earpieces. The hotel manager personally inspected every corner of the presidential suite on the top floor, where rare orchids from Yunnan province had been flown in overnight. The Huaxin delegation represents the largest potential investment in American manufacturing this year, the manager instructed the staff. President Zhao chose our hotel specifically for its reputation. Nothing, absolutely nothing, can go wrong. In the kitchen, chefs prepared authentic Sichuan cuisine alongside American steakhouse favorites. The wine cellar had been stocked with both rare French vintages and premium baijiu from China's Guizhou province. Digital displays throughout the hotel alternated between English and Mandarin welcome messages. Conference rooms were labeled in both languages, each equipped with the latest translation technology. Every employee had received a briefing on Chinese business etiquette. No gifts in sets of 4, always present business cards with 2 hands, respect hierarchical seating arrangements. The hotel's reputation and a potential $100 million hospitality contract with Huaxin's global operations hung in the balance. A staff member rushed through the lobby, clutching a folder of welcome packets. "They're bringing their own translators, right?" he asked a colleague, who nodded confidently. "Of course. Delegation this important? They'll have their entire support team." Neither noticed Alicia quietly emptying a wastebasket nearby, her movements efficient but deliberately unobtrusive, as if she'd trained herself to fade into the background. Michael Donovan arrived at the Grand Palmer Hotel at 6:32 a.m., a full hour before his executive team. At 57, he carried himself with the measured confidence of someone who'd climbed from regional sales to CEO through sheer determination and ruthless efficiency. His tailored Tom Ford suit couldn't hide the tension in his shoulders. "Coffee black," he ordered without looking at the lobby attendant. "And tell Henderson I need the conference room projection system tested again." His personal assistant, Vanessa, trotted alongside him, balancing an iPad, portfolio, and his preferred sparkling water. "The delegation lands at O'Hare in 90 minutes. Their motorcade will arrive here at approximately 9:45, she recited. "The Huaxin team includes President Zhao, 3 vice presidents, their legal counsel, and 2 interpreters." Michael stopped abruptly. "2 interpreters? Why 2? "One for technical terms, one for cultural context," Vanessa explained. "They're very thorough." "And our interpreter, Ms. Chen?" "Arriving at 8 o'clock. She's worked with the Shanghai office before. Excellent references." Michael nodded, resuming his brisk walk toward the elevators. "This deal means everything, Vanessa. 5 years ago, Apex was on the verge of bankruptcy. If we secure Huaxin's manufacturing partnership, our shareholders finally see the return I've promised them for years." In the elevator, He adjusted his red tie the color of luck in Chinese culture, according to the cultural consultant he'd hired. And personally, he added more quietly, this validates everything. My strategy, my leadership. The board stops questioning my decisions. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse conference suite. Michael immediately began inspecting each detail, the presentation materials, the seating arrangement, the temperature. "Where are the gift bags?" he snapped at a hotel coordinator. "And these flowers, they're too aromatic. Some people might be sensitive. Replace them." As staff scurried to accommodate his demands, Michael stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Chicago's skyline, his reflection revealing what his voice concealed, raw fear of failure disguised as perfectionism. As executives and hotel staff rushed through their morning preparations, Alicia Williams moved methodically through the service corridors with her cleaning cart. At 42, 15 years of hotel housekeeping had taught her the art of invisibility. How to enter a room, restore it to perfection, and leave without anyone acknowledging her presence. Her dark blue uniform hung slightly loose on her slender frame. The name tag pinned to her chest was slightly scratched from years of use. Beneath it, a small gold pin indicated her status as a senior staff member, a distinction few guests ever noticed. Alicia checked her daily assignment sheet, executive floor restrooms, hallways, and conference room pre-meeting touch-up, the highest profile spaces on the most important day. Management trusted her work, if not her voice. "Morning, Alicia," called Jerome, a room service attendant pushing a breakfast cart. "Heard about the Chinese bigwigs coming in?" She nodded, adjusting her cart to make room in the narrow service elevator. "Been preparing all week." "I heard the CEO up there is already making everyone crazy," Jerome whispered. "Yelled at Maria for bringing the wrong temperature water." Alicia's eyes showed no surprise. "That's nothing new." As the elevator doors opened, she instinctively lowered her gaze when two men in suits approached. They continued their conversation as if she were merely another service fixture, stepping around her cart without pause in their discussion about market projections. In the executive bathroom, Alicia worked efficiently, replacing hand towels and ensuring everything gleamed. On the counter lay an open leather portfolio someone had forgotten. Her eyes caught Mandarin characters on a page of notes. She smiled slightly, her fingers tracing the characters before closing the portfolio and placing it at the front desk for return. The executive floor erupted in commotion at 7:42 a.m. when Vanessa's phone rang. Her professional composure cracked as she listened, eyes widening with each passing second. "Mr. Donovan," she called out, her voice higher than usual. "I need to speak with you. Now." Michael excused himself from a huddle with his marketing team. The moment they stepped into the hallway, Vanessa whispered, "Ms. Chen was rushed to Northwestern Memorial an hour ago, acute appendicitis. She's heading into emergency surgery." The color drained from Michael's face. "Tell me you have a backup." "I've already called her agency. They're searching, but with the trade conference..." Michael loosened his tie, struggling to maintain composure. "How long until they find someone?" "They're not optimistic, sir. Every qualified Mandarin translator in the city is booked solid this week." The executive team watched through the glass walls as their CEO received the news. His body language told the story before he returned to the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," Michael announced, his voice controlled but tight. "We have a situation. Our translator is in surgery. We need alternatives immediately." The room erupted in suggested solutions. "What about translation software? Could we delay by a day? Northwestern University has a Chinese language department." Michael raised his hand for silence. "Vanessa, contact every translation service in a 100-mile radius. Derek, call Northwestern University of Chicago, any school with a Mandarin program. Rebecca, check if anyone at our Shanghai office could video conference in." As executives scattered with assignments, Alicia entered quietly with her cart, beginning to empty wastebaskets. The tension in the room was palpable as she worked along the periphery. Michael paced by the windows, phone pressed to his ear. "Yes, I understand you're fully booked, but this is Apex Ventures. We'll pay triple your standard rate." His face hardened. "Quadruple." After a moment, he ended the call without another word. Alicia continued working, her presence unnoticed as the crisis unfolded around her. The search for a replacement translator grew increasingly frantic over the next 30 minutes. The executive floor transformed into a desperate call center as every available phone line connected to language departments, translation agencies, and cultural centers throughout Chicago. "Northwestern's entire Chinese department is at the trade conference," Derek reported, hanging up his phone. "They suggested we try DePaul." Rebecca shook her head, covering her phone's microphone. "Shanghai office says their best English speakers are already en route with the delegation. The rest aren't fluent enough for contract negotiations." Hotel staff delivered fresh coffee and pastries that went untouched. The conference room table disappeared beneath scattered papers, open laptops, and abandoned breakfast plates. "What about the Chinese embassy?" someone suggested. "Already tried," Vanessa replied, scrolling through her contacts. "Their cultural attachés are hosting the delegation for dinner tonight." Michael stepped away from a heated call, his composed exterior finally cracking. "This is unacceptable. How is there not a single qualified Mandarin speaker available in the third largest city in America?" Alicia moved methodically around the room, collecting discarded paper cups and napkins. She paused briefly near a whiteboard where someone had scrawled "Translator options" above a list of crossed-out possibilities. Her expression remained neutral, but her eyes lingered on the Chinese characters someone had written as examples. By 8:30 a.m., the desperate energy in the room had transformed into grim resignation. Michael sat at the head of the conference table, head in his hands, as his team delivered the final verdict. "Sir," Vanessa said quietly, "we've exhausted every option. The closest qualified translator is in Detroit, but even if they caught the next flight..." "They'd still miss the initial meeting," Michael finished, his voice hollow. "The most critical part." The executive team exchanged uncomfortable glances. No one wanted to state the obvious that years of relationship building and negotiations might collapse because of this unforeseen complication. "Could we reschedule?" asked the marketing director. Michael laughed bitterly. "And insult President Zhao? He adjusted his entire U.S. visit to accommodate us. If we reschedule, they'll interpret it as a sign we don't value their time. The relationship would never recover." He stood abruptly, straightening his jacket with mechanical precision. "Prepare contingency statements for the press and shareholders," he instructed flatly. "Emphasis on unforeseen circumstances and continuing dialogue. Derek, draft a gracious apology to present to President Zhao upon arrival." The team watched their leader with stunned expressions. Michael had never admitted defeat so easily before. "One translator," he muttered. "Our entire future derailed by one person's appendix." While executives grappled with impending failure, Alicia continued her work, moving closer to the center of the room as the team dispersed into smaller crisis groups. She wiped down an empty section of the conference table, careful not to disturb the papers scattered nearby. A presentation deck lay open, showing slides with dual language headings. Alicia's eyes moved over the Chinese characters with practiced ease, her lips silently forming words as she read. 15 years of anonymous service had perfected her ability to observe without being observed. She caught fragments of the executives' conversations. Shareholders expecting announcement by end of week. Board won't survive another failed Asian expansion. Huaxin already talking to our competitors. Alicia moved to empty a wastebasket near Michael, who was staring blankly at his phone. $500 million, he murmured to Vanessa, unaware of Alicia's presence just feet away. And hundreds of manufacturing jobs that would have come back to Chicago. All gone because we can't find one person who speaks Mandarin. Alicia's hand paused mid-reach for a discarded coffee cup. A familiar weight settled in her chest, the knowledge that she could help, coupled with the certainty that her help wouldn't be welcomed. Not from someone like her. She glanced at her reflection in the window uniform that rendered her functionally invisible, hair pulled back severely as hotel policy required. Then back to the executives in their tailored suits, lamenting a problem she could solve in an instant. Alicia had spent a lifetime being unseen, her capabilities assumed based on her uniform. The daughter of a Chinese immigrant mother and African-American father, she'd grown up navigating multiple worlds, multiple languages, multiple expectations. Her mother had insisted she maintain perfect Mandarin, even as American schools pushed her toward assimilation. Now, as she collected trash from people who looked through her daily, a lifetime of calculated invisibility warred with the impulse to step forward and speak. Instead, she pushed her cart toward the door, telling herself it wasn't her problem to solve. In the service corridor, Alicia leaned against the wall, her practiced composure momentarily fractured. She closed her eyes, unwanted memories surfacing with painful clarity. 3 years earlier, she had overheard a Brazilian guest struggling to communicate with front desk staff. Alicia, who had picked up Portuguese from years working alongside Brazilian housekeepers, stepped forward to translate. The look of surprise, almost suspicion, from the hotel manager had been followed by a terse, "Please return to your assigned duties, Alicia." The guest had received proper assistance eventually, but Alicia's momentary visibility had earned her a documented warning about overstepping role boundaries. Before that, there had been the hotel investment meeting where she'd noticed a critical error in the financial documents left on a table. Her attempt to alert a staff member had been met with dismissal. "Just clean around it, please." She later learned the error had cost the hotel thousands. "It's not your place," her supervisor had reminded her repeatedly over the years. "Guests don't want your opinions. They want clean rooms and invisibility." Alicia pulled out her phone, quickly checking the time. Her son's college application deadline was approaching, tuition they couldn't afford without the second job she worked evenings. Her daughter's dance classes, already scaled back due to cost, would need to be cut entirely next month if something didn't change. She thought of her mother, who had arrived in America with a mathematics degree from Beijing University, only to spend decades cleaning homes for wealthy families. "Keep your head down," she had advised Alicia. "This country doesn't reward people like us for standing out." The service elevator dinged, and Jerome appeared, pushing an empty room service cart. "You okay?" he asked, noting her expression. Alicia straightened, mask of professional detachment sliding back into place. "I'm fine." "They're saying the Chinese delegation is arriving early. Whole executive floor is losing their minds." Alicia's hand tightened around her cart handle. Sometimes invisibility was a prison. Sometimes it was protection. Alicia returned to the executive floor just as the situation deteriorated further. Through the conference room's glass walls, she could see Michael jabbing his finger at a tablet, his face flushed with anger. "They've moved up the arrival by 30 minutes, Vanessa announced to the room. "President Zhao's plane landed early. Their motorcade is already on the highway." "Perfect," Michael growled. "We'll have even less time to embarrass ourselves." Alicia moved quietly around the periphery, replacing liners in wastebaskets, wiping down surfaces, collecting abandoned glasses. The executives had stopped noticing her hours ago. Now they didn't even pause their conversations as she worked beside them. "Maybe we can use one of their translators," a young executive suggested. "And immediately position ourselves as unprepared and dependent," Michael snapped. "Brilliant strategy, Jason. Why not just hand our patent portfolios directly to their legal team while we're at it?" Alicia witnessed Michael's transformation as panic gave way to cruelty. He criticized his team mercilessly, dismissed every suggestion, and finally knocked over a water glass in frustration, spilling it across presentation documents. "Someone clean this up," he shouted to no one in particular. Alicia moved forward with towels, kneeling to blot the spreading liquid before it ruined more papers. As she worked, Michael continued berating his team, unaware or uncaring of her presence inches away. 15 years building this company. 15 years of sacrifice, and it all falls apart because absolutely no one on this entire team thought to have a backup translator. Alicia's hands stilled on the wet papers. 15 years. The same amount of time she'd worked at this hotel, invisible and underestimated. Something shifted inside her, a lifetime of careful restraint cracking under the weight of opportunity and indignation. She thought of her mother, who had died never using her mathematics skills professionally in America, of her children, watching her accept limitations placed by others. The room fell silent as Alicia rose to her full height, still clutching the wet towels. For the first time that morning, every eye in the executive suite was fixed on her. "I can help you," she said clearly. "I speak Mandarin." The silence that followed Alicia's declaration was absolute. Water dripped from the soaked towels in her hands onto the plush carpet as a dozen executives stared at her with expressions ranging from confusion to disbelief. Michael recovered first, a humorless laugh escaping him. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Alicia placed the wet towels on her cart, squaring her shoulders. When she spoke again, her voice carried a quiet confidence that transformed her presence in the room. "Wo shuo liu li de zhongguen. Wo kei dangzuo nimen de fanyi." Her Mandarin flowed perfectly, each tonal shift precise. "I speak fluent Mandarin. I can serve as your translator." The marketing director whispered to his colleague, not quite quietly enough. "Is this a joke?" Alicia continued, unfazed. "My mother was from Guangzhou. She insisted I maintain perfect Mandarin throughout my childhood. I majored in international relations before—" She gestured subtly at her uniform, leaving the explanation unfinished. Michael stepped closer, scrutinizing her as if seeing her for the first time. "You're the housekeeper." "Senior Environmental Services Specialist," Alicia corrected politely. "I've worked at the Grand Palmer for 15 years. Vanessa approached cautiously. Ms. Williams. Alicia Williams." "Ms. Williams, this isn't simple conversation. This is a complex business negotiation with technical terminology, legal concepts, merger and acquisition language, manufacturing specifications, intellectual property law, import regulations," Alicia listed calmly. "I've cleaned this conference room during international negotiations for 15 years, Ms. Parker. I've heard it all." The executives exchanged uncertain glances. Michael studied Alicia with narrowed eyes, weighing impossibility against desperation. "Sir," Vanessa whispered urgently, "the delegation will be here in less than an hour." Michael rubbed his temples. "Do you have any way to verify your fluency? Any credentials?" "No certification," Alicia admitted. "But I've been listening to your team practice pronouncing Huaxin Jizao Jituan incorrectly all morning. It should be more aspirated on the second syllable Huaxin." A younger executive raised his eyebrows, impressed despite himself. One by one, the team members turned to Michael, waiting for his decision. "This is absurd," Derek muttered, pacing near the windows. "We're staking a $500 million deal on the housekeeping staff?" Michael held up his hand for silence, his analytical mind rapidly assessing options. "Get Henderson from legal in here, now." While they waited, the room remained tense. Alicia stood calmly, hands clasped before her, as executives whispered among themselves, occasionally glancing her way with poorly concealed skepticism. Henderson, the company's legal counsel, arrived within minutes. After a brief explanation, he produced his phone. "My wife is second-generation Taiwanese. Her mother speaks limited English. Let me call her." The speakerphone conversation that followed transformed the room's energy. Henderson's mother-in-law spoke rapidly in Mandarin, clearly confused by the situation. Alicia responded with perfect fluency, explaining the circumstances, even making the elderly woman laugh with a cultural reference. After several minutes, Henderson ended the call. She says Ms. Williams speaks like an educated native, with a slight southern accent consistent with Guangzhou. That's something, Michael conceded. But friendly conversation is different from business negotiation. Rebecca stepped forward with her tablet. I have the technical specifications document for the manufacturing proposal. It has both English and Mandarin versions. She handed the tablet to Alicia, who scrolled through the complex document, then looked up confidently. Ask me anything from this document. For the next 5 minutes, executives fired technical questions about manufacturing tolerances, supply chain logistics, and proprietary processes. Alicia translated each concept flawlessly, occasionally correcting subtle errors in the Chinese translation that could have caused confusion. Michael checked his watch. The delegation arrives in 40 minutes. His eyes met Alicia's. We have no choice, but this is highly irregular. Michael led Alicia to a quiet corner of the conference room, away from the curious stares of his team. His expression remained guarded, caught between desperation and disbelief. Let me be absolutely clear, he said, lowering his voice. If you do this, if you represent Apex Ventures as our translator, everything must be perfect. These negotiations have been in progress for 2 years. One mistranslated term could cost us everything. Alicia met his gaze steadily. I understand the stakes, Mr. Donovan. Do you? This deal means hundreds of jobs. It means the difference between expansion and contraction for this company. It means the same for me, Alicia replied quietly. Different scale, same consequences. Something in her tone made Michael pause. For the first time, he seemed to actually see her not as a solution to his problem, but as a person with her own motivations. What do you want in return? He asked bluntly. Fair compensation for specialized skills, she answered without hesitation. 5 times my daily rate. Michael almost laughed. 5 times a housekeeper's daily rate is still a fraction of what we'd pay a professional translator. Then we both benefit, Alicia said. You get your translator. I get recognized for skills beyond cleaning. Michael considered this, then nodded sharply. Done. But there's a problem. You can't represent Apex in that uniform. Vanessa, who had been hovering nearby, stepped forward. I'll handle that. We can find something appropriate. And she'll need to review all presentation materials immediately, Michael added. Decision made. Derek, brief her on key negotiation points. Rebecca, technical specifications. Jason, relationship background. He checked his watch again. 35 minutes, people. As the team mobilized around their unexpected solution, Michael turned back to Alicia. One more thing. As far as the Huaxin delegation is concerned, you're our corporate translator who's been with us throughout these negotiations. Your regular role here stays confidential. Understood? Alicia's expression remained carefully neutral. Perfectly, sir. She turned to follow Vanessa, pausing only to send a quick text message to her supervisor. Emergency situation. Executives need my assistance. We'll explain later. The executive conference room transformed into an impromptu briefing center with Alicia at its heart. Seated at the table, where she had only ever served coffee or emptied trash, she now rapidly absorbed stacks of documents, negotiation points, and company background. The delegation is particularly concerned about intellectual property protections, Derek explained, sliding another folder toward her. These points here are non-negotiable for us. Alicia scanned the documents with practiced efficiency, occasionally making notes in precise handwriting. Some of these technical terms are specialized. Do you have the Mandarin equivalents? Rebecca frowned. Ms. Chen was handling that. I'll manage, Alicia replied, already jotting down characters in the margins. From across the room, several executives watched the scene with poorly disguised skepticism. This is going to be a disaster, whispered Thomas, the VP of Operations, just loudly enough to be heard. She cleans toilets for a living. Michael shot him a warning glance, but the damage was done. Alicia's pen paused momentarily before continuing. The manufacturing specifications reference a proprietary coating process, she noted, redirecting the conversation. Is there documentation for this? Jason hurried over with another tablet. It's highly technical. Are you sure you can? Yes, Alicia interrupted firmly, taking the device. Her eyes moved rapidly over the content, absorbing the information with focused intensity. In the background, Vanessa was on the phone with hotel management. No, we need someone to cover Ms. Williams' duties immediately. This is an emergency situation. Time compressed around them as Alicia processed 2 years of negotiation history in 20 minutes. Occasionally, executives would test her with questions, their surprise evident when she responded with thorough understanding. How did you learn business Mandarin while working in housekeeping? Rebecca finally asked during a brief pause. Alicia looked up from her notes. I didn't learn it while cleaning. I knew it before. Life just took a different turn than I planned. Before Rebecca could respond, Vanessa rushed in. They're 15 minutes out. We need to get Ms. Williams changed immediately. Michael nodded tensely. And we need to brief the team on this adjustment to our plans. The women's executive restroom became an impromptu dressing room as Vanessa produced a selection of clothing borrowed from female executives and the hotel's lost and found. This should fit, she said, holding up a charcoal gray blazer. Rebecca is closest to your size. Alicia carefully hung her uniform in a stall, hyper-aware of the stark contrast between her work clothes and the designer pieces being offered. The blazer fit reasonably well across her shoulders. A borrowed black sheath dress, slightly loose but passable, completed the basic outfit. Vanessa assessed her critically. Better, but not quite right. She disappeared, returning moments later with a hotel concierge. Melanie knows every shop in the building. We need accessories, fast. Within minutes, Melanie returned with a silk scarf in deep burgundy, simple pearl earrings, and low black heels. The boutique manager sends her compliments. All items can be returned after the meeting. As Alicia changed, she caught glimpses of herself in the mirror transformation unfolding in real time. The woman reflected back was both familiar and strange, like an alternate universe version of herself who had taken different paths at crucial junctures. Your hair, Vanessa said, gesturing to Alicia's practical bun. May I? With careful hands, Vanessa reworked Alicia's hair into a sleek, professional style. There, you look the part now. Alicia stared at her reflection. The clothing transformed more than her appearance. It altered how others would perceive her capabilities, her intelligence, her worth. The unfairness of this reality settled like a weight on her shoulders even as she straightened them. 5 minutes until they arrive, Vanessa said, checking her phone. Are you ready? Alicia gathered the negotiation notes she'd been studying. Yes. As they exited the restroom, they passed a housekeeping cart identical to the one Alicia had pushed that morning. The young housekeeper pushing it flattened herself against the wall to let them pass, eyes downcast, invisible. Alicia nodded to her colleague with deliberate respect before following Vanessa toward the conference room, where executives now waited for her to save their $500 million deal. As the transformation of Alicia neared completion, Thomas, the VP of Operations, cornered Michael near the elevator bank. Michael, a word. His voice was low, urgent. This is madness. We're about to entrust the most important negotiation in company history to a housekeeper. Michael glanced toward the conference room, where Alicia was reviewing final documents. We don't have alternatives, Thomas, and she seems to know what she's doing. Seems is the operative word. Thomas moved closer. I made some calls. The Detroit Translator could be here by early afternoon. We explained the emergency to the delegation, proceed with introductions and the facility tour this morning, and handle the substantive negotiations after lunch. And look completely unprepared in the process, Michael countered. Better than looking foolish when she mistranslates technical specifications. Thomas's voice hardened. Think about it, Michael. What's more likely that we've had a qualified Mandarin translator cleaning our bathrooms for years, or that she's exaggerating her abilities and will embarrass us all? Michael hesitated, doubt creeping across his expression. There she is now, Thomas murmured, as Alicia approached with Vanessa, transformed by her new attire. I'll admit, she looks the part, but appearances aren't expertise. Alicia sensed the tension immediately. Is everything all right? Michael studied her, reconsidering everything. Thomas suggests we delay substantive negotiations until our Detroit translator arrives this afternoon. I see. Alicia's expression remained carefully neutral, though something flickered in her eyes. And what role would I play then? Thomas smiled thinly. You could handle basic pleasantries, show that we're making an effort, then step aside for the professional. The word professional hung in the air, its implication clear. Alicia absorbed the blow without visible reaction, years of practice controlling her response. Before she could answer, a hotel manager rushed toward them. Mr. Donovan, the Huaxin delegation has arrived. They're coming up now. Michael looked from Thomas to Alicia, decision point reached. The elevator lights indicated a car ascending from the lobby. Final chance, Thomas pressed. Detroit translator or hotel housekeeper? The elevator doors opened, revealing the first members of the Chinese delegation stepping forward. We proceed as planned, Michael decided. Ms. Williams is our translator. The Huaxin delegation emerged from the elevators with practiced precision. First came 2 security personnel, followed by assistants carrying portfolios. Then President Zhao himself, a distinguished man in his 60s, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his posture conveying quiet authority. Behind him followed the company's vice presidents and legal team. Michael stepped forward with a practiced smile, extending his hand. President Zhao, welcome to Chicago. President Zhao nodded politely, but did not immediately take Michael's hand. Instead, he spoke in Mandarin to a younger man beside him, who stepped forward to translate. President Zhao says he is pleased to finally meet in person after 2 years of remote discussions. Michael nodded, gesturing toward Alicia. We understand the importance of clear communication. May I introduce Ms. Williams, who will be assisting with translation today. Alicia stepped forward and addressed President Zhao directly in Mandarin, her pronunciation flawless, her formal greeting impeccable. She introduced herself with appropriate honorifics, expressing the company's gratitude for Huaxin's visit. President Zhao's expression shifted from polite neutrality to genuine interest. He responded in rapid Mandarin, a subtle smile appearing. Alicia turned to Michael. President Zhao is pleased to meet someone who speaks his language so clearly. He says your thoughtfulness in providing a translator who understands both the technical aspects and cultural contexts shows Apex's commitment to this partnership. The Huaxin delegation members exchanged impressed glances. President Zhao's translator whispered something to a colleague, clearly surprised. Thomas, watching from the side, attempted to mask his astonishment. Vanessa caught Michael's eye with a subtle nod of reassurance. As the group moved toward the conference room, President Zhao continued speaking directly to Alicia, asking about her background. She responded confidently, navigating the cultural exchange with practiced ease, establishing immediate rapport that had taken others months to build. The conference room hummed with energy as both delegations took their seats. Digital displays showed the Apex logo alongside Huaxin's corporate emblem. Water pitchers, notepads, and presentation materials were arranged with precision before each chair. Michael began his welcome presentation, pausing after each section for Alicia to translate. What started as simple interpretation quickly evolved into something more valuable, as Alicia provided cultural context alongside literal translation. When Michael mentioned aggressive timeline goals, Alicia subtly modified the phrasing to ambitious shared objectives, avoiding the negative connotation aggressive carried in Chinese business culture. President Zhao responded with detailed questions about manufacturing specifications. Alicia translated these with technical precision, occasionally adding clarification. President Zhao is specifically asking about tolerances in the third production phase, referencing the specifications on page 22. The Huaxin executives began directing technical questions to Alicia directly, impressed by her command of specialized terminology. She fielded each question with confidence, translating complex engineering concepts without hesitation. During a discussion of intellectual property protections, one of Huaxin's legal advisors made a lengthy statement filled with subtle implications. Alicia translated not just the words, but the underlying meaning. He's expressing concern about Clause 4.2, but what he's really asking is whether Apex would consider a limited technology sharing agreement for the Chinese market only. Michael's eyebrows rose slightly at this insight. Thomas, who had been watching skeptically from the corner, leaned forward with newfound respect. When conversation turned to cultural differences in management styles, Alicia shared a relevant Chinese proverb that perfectly illustrated the point Michael was attempting to make. President Zhao nodded appreciatively, repeating the proverb to his team with evident approval. Throughout the morning, Alicia moved effortlessly between languages, maintaining the rhythm of conversation while ensuring no detail was lost. She took minimal notes, her memory proving exceptional, and managed the complex dynamics of intercultural negotiation with natural skill. By the coffee break, the atmosphere had transformed. What began as formal diplomatic exchange had evolved into genuine dialogue, with Alicia serving not merely as a conduit for words, but as a bridge between business cultures. As the negotiation progressed to financial terms, tension subtly entered the room. President Zhao's expression hardened slightly when projected profit margins were displayed. He exchanged whispers with his CFO, their tone causing concern among the Apex team. President Zhao spoke at length in Mandarin, his formal language masking his reaction. Alicia listened intently, noting subtle shifts in his body language and tone that others missed. President Zhao says the proposed terms are acceptable, she translated smoothly. Then, lowering her voice slightly, she added, however, he's concerned about the revenue-sharing structure for the Asian markets. There's cultural context here. The number 8 is highly auspicious in Chinese business. Our proposed 7.5% appears deliberately avoiding this lucky number. Michael looked confused. It's just a standard calculation based on projected volumes. May I suggest something? Alicia asked quietly. When Michael nodded, she turned to President Zhao and spoke in Mandarin for nearly a minute, occasionally gesturing toward the financial projections. President Zhao's expression transformed. He nodded with increasing enthusiasm, responding rapidly. Alicia turned back to Michael. I suggested restructuring to an 8% share for their domestic market and 7% for international, keeping our total the same, but acknowledging cultural significance. He's not only satisfied, but impressed by our cultural sensitivity. The Huaxin delegation conferred briefly before President Zhao smiled and extended his hand to Michael. We have agreement on terms, he said in careful English, his first English words of the meeting. Thomas stared in disbelief. The negotiation point that had concerned their team for weeks had been resolved in minutes through cultural insight no one else possessed. Michael shook President Zhao's hand firmly, shooting Alicia a look of profound gratitude. What could have been a deal-breaking impasse had instead become a moment of connection. The formal negotiations concluded with signatures on preliminary agreement documents. As hotel staff prepared for the luncheon to follow, President Zhao approached Alicia directly, speaking in Mandarin with genuine curiosity. Your command of our language is exceptional, he said, switching to a regional dialect. Few Americans I've met speak with such natural fluency. Where did you study? Alicia responded in the same dialect without hesitation. I learned from my mother, who came from Guangzhou in the 1970s. She insisted I maintain our language and culture. President Zhao's eyes widened with pleasant surprise. Ah, You speak like someone from my wife's hometown. This explains the natural quality of your expressions. The vice president of Huaxin joined them, addressing Alicia with newfound respect. Ms. Williams, your technical vocabulary is impressive. Most translators struggle with manufacturing terminology, yet you navigated it flawlessly. Thank you, Alicia replied modestly. I've always had an interest in business language. As the conversation continued, other delegation members gathered around. What began as professional appreciation evolved into genuine cultural exchange, with Alicia sharing stories of her Chinese heritage and the delegates discussing regional differences within China. From across the room, Michael watched this unexpected development with astonishment. What had begun as an emergency solution had transformed into a significant advantage. The Huaxin executives were connecting with Alicia in a way they never had with the Apex team during 2 years of remote negotiations. Thomas approached Michael. His earlier skepticism completely evaporated. I've never seen them this relaxed and engaged, he admitted quietly. She's not just translating words, she's bridging cultures. Michael nodded slowly, a realization dawning. And to think, she's been here all along, invisible to us. During the celebratory luncheon, Michael found himself observing Alicia with growing wonder. She moved comfortably between both delegations, facilitating conversations that ranged from business specifics to cultural exchanges. President Zhao had requested she sit near him, a clear indication of the rapport she had established. When Alicia briefly stepped away to retrieve a document, Michael approached her in the hallway. Ms. Williams, he began, uncharacteristic hesitation in his voice. I owe you an apology. Alicia looked up, surprised. Sir? We've crossed paths nearly every day for... How long have you worked here? 15 years, she replied. 15 years, he repeated, the significance settling heavily. And in all that time, I never once actually saw you. Not really. Understanding crossed Alicia's face. She remained silent, allowing him to continue. I made assumptions based on your uniform. We all did. Michael shook his head. How many other skills, how many other talents have we overlooked because we couldn't see past job titles? Many, Alicia answered simply. In every workplace. Michael nodded slowly. Today you didn't just save a business deal. You've given me a perspective I clearly needed. Before Alicia could respond, Vanessa approached urgently. Mr. Donovan, President Zhao is requesting both of you. He has an announcement. They exchanged curious glances before returning to the luncheon, where President Zhao stood waiting with unexpected news. President Zhao stood at the head of the table, champagne flute in hand, waiting for Michael and Alicia to return. The room quieted as he prepared to speak, his translator standing ready. To everyone's surprise, President Zhao addressed the room in careful, accented English. Today marks beginning of partnership between Huaxin and Apex, he stated, glancing occasionally at prepared notes. But good partnership needs good communication. He switched to Mandarin, looking directly at Alicia as his translator conveyed his message. President Zhao says that communication requires more than just language. It requires cultural understanding and trust. He believes Ms. Williams has demonstrated exceptional ability in creating this bridge. President Zhao continued, his expression serious but positive. As part of our agreement, Huaxin would like to request that Ms. Williams serve as the permanent liaison between our companies during the implementation phase. Her unique abilities would ensure clarity and prevent misunderstandings. Michael blinked in surprise, looking from President Zhao to Alicia. Before he could respond, the Huaxin CFO added something in Mandarin. Alicia translated, her voice carefully controlled. They're offering to cover half the cost of the position from their side of the partnership. They consider it an investment in the success of our joint venture. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Michael. He studied Alicia for a long moment, seeing for the first time the intelligence and capability that had always been present behind the invisible uniform. Ms. Williams, he said finally. Apex Ventures would like to offer you a permanent position as our Director of International Relations, with special focus on our Asian partnerships. Starting salary 5 times your current rate, plus benefits and advancement opportunities. Would you be interested? The room held its collective breath, waiting for her answer. 6 months later, Alicia stepped out of a taxi in front of the Grand Palmer Hotel. Her tailored navy suit and briefcase replaced the uniform and cleaning cart that had defined her professional identity for 15 years. The doorman, who had rarely noticed her before, greeted her by name with a respectful nod. In the elegant hotel lobby, she passed the cleaning staff at work. Each received her warm smile and direct eye contact acknowledgement of their presence, their humanity. Several recognized her, returning the smile with a hint of pride. At home, changes were equally profound. Her son's college acceptance letter hung framed on the wall, tuition no longer an insurmountable obstacle. Her daughter had resumed dance classes, now with proper equipment and opportunities for advanced training. Alicia's modest apartment now contained a dedicated office space with language reference books and international business journals. On her desk sat a framed photo from the Chicago Tribune business section. Alicia standing between Michael and President Zhao at the official partnership announcement, the caption highlighting her critical role in the cross-cultural venture. A handwritten card from her late mother's best friend rested nearby. Mei Lin would be so proud to see you using all your gifts. The daily indignities of invisibility had transformed into recognition, respect, and the sweet satisfaction of potential finally realized, not just for Alicia, but potentially for others who would follow. The quarterly Apex leadership meeting looked markedly different than it had a year before. Michael stood at the front of the conference room beside a PowerPoint slide titled Talent Discovery Initiative. The Huaxin partnership is exceeding projections by 17%, he explained to the assembled executives and department heads. Our analysts attribute this largely to the cultural competency Ms. Williams brought to the implementation team. Alicia, now a regular participant in these meetings, nodded appreciatively from her seat at the table. But this success story forces us to ask an uncomfortable question, Michael continued. How many other Alicias work in our company, with talents and abilities we've never bothered to discover? The slide changed to reveal a new company program structured interviews with all support staff, skills inventories, educational assistants, and internal promotion pathways specifically designed to identify hidden talent. Our janitorial supervisor speaks 4 languages. A cafeteria worker has an engineering degree from Ethiopia. A security guard is a certified mediator, Michael listed. We've begun matching these skills to company needs, with 5 internal transitions already completed. In the back of the room, Thomas, now a champion of the initiative, added, "The ROI calculations are compelling. Talent acquisition costs drop while employee loyalty increases." Michael nodded, then looked directly at Alicia. But the real return is in becoming the kind of company that sees people for their full potential, not just their current role. The greatest waste in business isn't inefficient processes, it's overlooked human potential, Michael concluded, surveying the room. Every person deserves to be seen, heard, and valued for their complete range of abilities. Alicia rose to join him at the podium, her presence now commanding the same respect once reserved for executives. Talent doesn't always arrive in expected packages, she added quietly. Sometimes the solutions to our greatest challenges are already within our organizations, hidden in plain sight, waiting only for someone to look past uniforms, titles, or backgrounds and simply ask, "What else can you do? What else do you know?" As the meeting concluded, attendees approached Alicia with questions, ideas, and invitations to departmental discussions. The transformation extended beyond her individual success to a fundamental shift in organizational culture. Later, alone in her office overlooking Chicago's skyline, Alicia called her daughter with news about an educational opportunity. As she hung up, her eyes fell on a handwritten note from a hotel housekeeper who had recently joined the accounting department after the talent initiative discovered her finance degree. The note read simply, "Thank you for making them see us." Alicia smiled, turning to her computer to continue work on the talent discovery program that would soon expand company-wide. The question that had changed her life now had the potential to change countless others. Who else is invisible in your world, with gifts waiting to be recognized? If this story moved you, there are countless more powerful narratives waiting to inspire you on Beat Stories. These aren't just stories. They're reflections of real human experiences that can transform how we see the world around us. Hit that subscribe button and join our community of thoughtful viewers who believe in the power of stories to change lives. Don't forget to like this video and ring that notification bell so you never miss our weekly uploads of life-changing narratives. Share this video with someone whose potential deserves to be seen. Beat Stories, where every voice matters, including yours.